Let's start with a quick quiz. I have 3 images in a document, and I've written alt text for each one. I'm going to have a screen reader read the alt text. See if you can figure out what the images are and why they're in the document.
Graphic bar chart, graphic classroom, graphic login screen.
Could you learn anything from that? Could you answer questions about those images? Probably not, and that's a problem. Let's take a look at what those images actually are. The first image is a bar chart comparing hours of study per week by major. The point is to show which majors study more, but bar chart doesn't tell you any of that. The second image illustrates inequality, a Jim Crow-era classroom with very poor learning conditions. The alt text just said classroom. And the third image is a login form used to explain what fields are required. But again, login screen doesn't help you understand how to use this screen. In all 3 cases, the alt text tells you what the image is, but not what you're supposed to learn from it. And that's the difference between writing alt text that technically exists and writing alt text that supports understanding, and if you're an educator, learning. For the first image, for example, instead of bar chart, you might say, bar chart comparing hours of study per week by field of study. We'll come back and fix all 3 of these, but first, let's talk about how to decide what belongs in alt text, what belongs somewhere else, and when to skip alt text altogether. As I've mentioned in past accessibility videos, I'm not an accessibility expert. I'm a professor doing my best to provide equal access to my online course materials, and I've made a lot of alt text mistakes along the way. When you include an image in your course materials, in a PDF or word processed document uploaded directly to your LMS or as part of a quiz or assignment, you have a purpose for including that image. Identifying the purpose will help you decide how best to fulfill that purpose for learners who can't see the image. One image purpose is decoration. A decorative image contributes no meaning. You should include empty alt text for a decorative image. This might mean checking a box that indicates the image is decorative, or if you're working in the HTML, putting alt equals quote quote in the tag attributes. Assistive technology like a screen reader will ignore the image if it has empty alt text, so it won't contribute audio clutter. If the image is informative, communicate that information in the alt text. I have an example from one of my textbooks. In this section of the book, I'm writing code to predict the years cicadas will emerge, and I have a photo of a cicada captioned "A cicada specimen from the author's collection." Is this a decorative image? After all, it's a programming book and not an entomology book. I don't think it's decorative, though, because if a student doesn't know what a cicada is, this image clearly communicates that a cicada is an insect. So I might write in the alt text, "A cicada is an insect." If the purpose of the image is to inform the reader that a cicada is an insect, which is necessary to understand the example, then that's what the alt text should convey. Now, reviewing that, I might think it wouldn't hurt to remind all readers that a cicada is an insect, otherwise they might be distracted wondering what I'm talking about instead of focusing on the instruction. So alternatively, I could incorporate into the body of the text just a quick statement such as, "A cicada is an insect that spends part of its life cycle underground, emerging periodically." Then the image becomes decorative, because I've explained in the text what a cicada is, and there's no reason for a screen reader to read out that there's a picture of a cicada that the listener can't see. So the same image can be informative or decorative, depending on whether its meaning is already provided somewhere else. You might have an image of text where the purpose is to convey the text. If an image is just text, your alt text should repeat that text exactly. But if the styling or surrounding elements add meaning, like emphasis or emotion or context, you need to include that meaning in your alt text too. One good example of words with contextual meaning is a stop sign. You don't just want to convey the word stop, you want to convey that the word stop is printed on an octagonal red sign. For some images, the purpose is to communicate complex information, for example, a chart or a graph, a map, or a diagram. Complex information needs to be communicated in 2 parts, a short description for the alt text, and then a longer description that includes the detailed information contained in the image. In Blackboard, you can add both alt text and a long description to an image. If your LMS doesn't have an option for a long description, you can include the long description close to the image, such as immediately after, or you can include a link to a separate page that contains the long description. But consider embedding the long description in the content of the page so everyone has access to it. This is particularly important in an educational setting where students might benefit from more examples of how to read an image that conveys complex information. I recommend searching for guidance on writing long descriptions for diagrams in your field and follow that guidance. Because plots are fairly universal, I'm going to share some guidance on writing longer descriptions for plots here. This guidance is from Thomas Watkins. I will include a link to a video interview with him in the description. Write alt text that includes the title and type of the plot, or type and purpose of the plot, for example, line plot of U.S. military expenditure. Then in the long description include, in this order, the title of the plot, the type of plot, and the key objective of the plot. Then orient the data for reading, and then give the data. So, for example, military expenditure, current USD, United States, is a line plot that shows the growth of military expenditure over time. The y-axis shows values from 0 to 1 in tenths, and the x-axis shows years from 1960 to 2020. Expenditures increase from 0.05 in 1960 to 1 in 2020, with bumps in 1990, 2010, and 2020, and a dip in 2015. Again, considering the purpose of the image, you can include the data as a table, or even replace the long description with a table if that will be easier to understand. Now, what if your image is part of an assessment? That can feel tricky because you don't want to give away the answer in your alt text or long description. But really, you're going to ask yourself the same question. What is the purpose of this image in the context of this assessment? Fulfill that purpose with your alt text or long description. Provide equivalent information that helps the student understand the question. Here's an example. Suppose you show a bar chart and ask, which study method resulted in the highest test scores? If your alt text says, bar chart showing that practice testing leads to the highest scores, you've just given away the answer. Instead, your alt text might say, bar chart comparing test scores across 4 study methods, and then you provide the data in a table. Practice testing 85, distributed practice 78, highlighting 65, rereading 60. Now the student has access to the same information, but still has to answer the question. For a quick recap, with each image in your course materials, ask yourself the purpose of the image. Use that purpose to decide what alternative to include and how to include it. If the purpose of the image is decoration, check the decorative box or include an empty alt description. If it's not decorative, fulfill the same purpose with an alt text description, alt text plus a long description, or by embedding the description in the body of the document. Here are 2 other important tips. Do not begin your alt text with image of or some equivalent because a screen reader will already say that. And put a period at the end of your alt text because a screen reader will pause at a period, which helps separate the image from the surrounding content. Now, let's apply these guidelines to the images from the quiz. We've already replaced the alt text bar chart with bar chart comparing hours of study per week by field of study. But because this is complex data, we want to break this into 2 pieces. We'll add either a long description to the image or in the text near the image. In the long description, we might write, how study habits stack up is a bar chart that compares the percentage of seniors in different majors who study more than 20 hours a week. The majors and values are engineering 42%, physical sciences 36%, biological sciences 34%, arts and humanities 31%, education 26%, social sciences 23%, business 19%. For this chart, there's no reason to orient the viewer to the data. It's a simple table of categories and values. Our second image was tagged classroom. The purpose of showing this image is to communicate the poor condition of schools that serve children of color during the Jim Crow era. So we might describe this image as children of color ranging from elementary to high school age, packed tightly into a dilapidated classroom with no desks, sitting 2 to a bench. And finally, for our login screen example, we need to communicate the fields the user must complete. So we might write login form with required email ID and password fields and a login button. Now, instead of guessing what the images are, your students can actually learn from them. I hope this video empowers you to write alternative text that makes your course materials accessible to all of your learners. As always, if you have questions or comments, please drop them below. Thank you for working toward accessibility. It's important work. Take care.